What's up everybody, I'm HoopsandHipHop and welcome back to another Pokemon Sword and Shield video. Now, these games with the limited information we have so far have been dissected to death, and understandably most fans are ready to have some more information, but it doesn't seem like Game Freak is ready to give more to us at this time. With that said, over the past few days I've actually noticed some things about the game and the information we've gotten that I haven't really heard anyone else talking about, so that's exactly what I wanted to go over today. 10 things about Pokemon Sword and Shield that you probably haven't noticed. Now, it is important to note here that I'm not trying to blow your mind with any type of huge theory that reveals the entire plot of the whole game. No, instead, I have just found some interesting things that are at least worthy to take note of as we wait for more information. Some of them are a little more interesting than others, some could mean more than others, but I thought that they were all noteworthy and were at least kind of a fun little tidbit that was worth talking about in a video, and that's exactly what I'm here to do today. So without any further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started. Okay, first things first, why don't we start off with a big one, and that would actually have to do with something at the end of the reveal trailer, more specifically the scene where we see the male player protagonist walking out into one of the gym stadium-like buildings with what appears to be a soccer uniform on. Now, this particular scene was dissected pretty heavily when the trailer came out, but one thing in particular that I haven't seen anyone talking about is the weird glove-like thing that the player character has on his right hand. Now, I think that this is particularly interesting, not only because it looks distinctive and looks like it has a purpose, but it also reminds me a lot of the Keystone from Pokemon X and Y that you used for Mega Evolution and the Z-Ring from Pokemon Sun and Moon that you used for Z-moves. The reason why is that both of those particular items were things that the player character wore on their wrist, and this glove, even though it's more on your hand, is kind of in the same area. So because of that, I could definitely see this glove type device being part of the key feature of this game, like it was for Mega Evolution in Gen 6 or for Z moves in Generation 7. Now, this particular idea is pure speculation on my part, but I do firmly believe that this glove-like item is worth taking note of as we get closer to the release of the game, because I believe there's at least a decent chance that it could have some significance in the final game. Next up, here is a fun little piece of trivia for you. The newly introduced Galar region that is featuring in Pokemon Sword and Shield is actually the only core series region to date not to have an O in its English name, and it keeps up the long-standing tradition of having a name consisting of specifically 5 letters, as every single region in the main series outside of the Sinnoh region has consisted of a 5-lettered name. Next up is one that could mean something, it could mean nothing, but it's definitely worth taking note of. Now, at the beginning of the Sword and Shield reveal trailer, many people noticed the Fletchling weather vane as it was right front and center on one of those first shots, but what they did not notice were the things below it. Right below the Fletchling part of the weather vane are 2 particular symbols. One to the right is a crescent moon-shaped symbol, and then the other one to the left is simply a circle, but given the context of the crescent moon symbol, I am willing to bet that this is actually supposed to represent a sun, which means we have sun and moon symbols on this weather vane, which obviously correlates to Generation 7. And given that Fletchling features on this weather vane as well, this could be a nice subtle nod to the last 2 generations of Pokemon prior to Sword and Shield. However, it could also mean nothing and could not be connected to those games at all, but once again, I thought it was worth taking note of. Now, one thing that was noticed by fans on the map of the Galar region is that you can actually pick out several of the gym stadium-like areas on the map like we saw in the trailer. You can see the one that we saw in the trailer being the grass gym, and then there's a few others dotted throughout the map as well, but unfortunately we cannot see all 8 specifically on the map itself. However, there is one more that we can actually pick out aside from the ones that you can see on the map in the trailer, because when we get some shots of that steampunk city that seems to be very prominent within the Galar region. For 4 particular frames of one of the shots that features this city, you can actually pick out one more gym, as the logo for the gyms of this region can start to be seen creeping out from behind a building. Now, given the prominence of this city within the region, it was probably fairly likely that we were going to get a gym in this city anyway, but the fact that it's kind of a hidden detail in the trailer that you can only see for 4 frames is definitely worth taking note of. Now, next up we have something that I feel like I could get a little bit of flack for, but I personally thought it was interesting, and this is my video, so I figured, hey, what the heck. It was discovered almost instantly by fans that Sobble is actually based on a chameleon, and due to the fact that Sobble is a water type, this actually completes a rather interesting trio of lizard-like starter Pokemon. Starting with the grass type, we have Trico from Generation 3, and then moving on to the fire type, we of course have Charmander from Generation 1, and then finally for the water type, we now have Sobble in Generation 8. I know we already do have a reptile-based water starter in the form of Squirtle that obviously came before Sobble, but when it comes to the more lizardy-like Pokemon, Sobble does create a rather interesting and unique starter trio, along with Charmander and Trico, and like I said, I found it interesting, so I thought I'd bring it up in the video. Now, another very interesting one comes at the midway point of the trailer. Once we start seeing some battle sequences, we see one particular trainer that is using a Grubbin, and if you freeze frame on this particular scene and take a look at the trainer himself, you can actually see on his shirt a logo of a Rotom Pokedex. Now, it is kind of hard to see given that it's very small, but if you compare it to the Rotom Pokedex itself, it's fairly obvious that this is the case, especially since the trainer himself is using a Gen 7 Pokemon in Grubbin. Now, does this simply mean that this guy is from Alola, or could it be a little more significant? We actually see on a lot of the trainers in the trailer that they have emblem-like logos on their shirts, and it honestly reminds me of the logos of the houses from Harry Potter, even down to the point of it being on that position on their shirts. So maybe we've got a schoolhouse type of situation, or maybe this doesn't mean anything, but either way, I think it's something that you should take note of as we continue to await more information. Another thing I thought was rather peculiar and could mean more in the final game is the fact that there is actually a couple of random sheds that we see throughout the trailer. We first see one by the lake area of the game next to the building that is speculated to be the Pokemon Laboratory, and then again we see another one on what appears to be Route 1 in a different location. Now, the interesting thing about these buildings is that they are 2 separate buildings in 2 separate locations, yet they look the exact same. What's even more peculiar about this fact is that we are no longer in the days of 2D sprites where simple basic buildings would be copy and pasted all throughout the map. No, we are in the days of 3D modeling, and as such, buildings like this tend to be a little more unique to themselves. So the fact that we are seeing 2 buildings like this that are the exact same says to me that they might be a little more significant than just a decorative piece. Speaking of random things that look to be more than just a decorative piece, we actually have the presence of multiple ladders throughout the trailer. Now, the first one we see is actually right next to one of those shed buildings on what looks to be a mill or a windmill of some kind, and initially I wrote this off as literally a decorative piece, but then we actually see another one in a battle sequence in a desert-like area, and this is what caught my attention, because there's a reason for a ladder to be on that mill, and just because there's one there doesn't mean you would be able to climb it, for instance. But the fact that there is a ladder in this desert, rocky, canyon-like area when there realistically is no reason for something like that to be there says to me that maybe we're going to be able to climb those ladders, and that is going to be a gameplay element in the game, which sounds rather simple, but for Pokemon that's actually rather big, because as far as I can remember, we've literally never been able to climb ladders in a main series Pokemon game, so it'll be interesting if this actually comes to fruition. Another thing that we see multiple of throughout the trailer is actually multiple of the fletchling weather vanes. Everyone saw the one at the beginning of the trailer that was front and center, but there's actually another one in the first town on top of the purple building, and you can see it during the battle with the Pikachu that the female player character has. Now obviously this is a very small detail, but I found it rather interesting that there were two fletchling weather vanes, let alone so closely together within the game. It does seem like there is a lot of focus on Kalos in the Galar region, so it will be interesting to see if this Kalos focus ends up actually meaning anything, and if we might actually get to see the Kalos region itself, or at least some Kalos-based characters. And last but not least, we have another feature about the starters. Now, the starters themselves have been dissected and analyzed to death, but I found one more thing that is rather interesting. Once again, might be worth taking note of, might not mean anything, but it's fun to mention nonetheless. All three Galar starters actually have a key design feature, or at the very least a potential key design feature that is on their face. First and most obvious, of course, would be Scorbunny with the bandage around its nose that could potentially indicate its typing when it evolves. From there, we've got Grookey, who obviously has the mask-like pattern around its eyes, and who knows if this will mean anything for its evolutions, but it definitely is a key part of its design. And then finally, and most ambiguously of all, we have Sobble. Now, it doesn't really seem like Sobble has much of anything on its face, at least compared to the other two, but it has been speculated that the part that runs down Sobble's face that starts between its eyes could actually resemble a curtain, as in the curtain of a stage, which could represent the concept of the theater or performing on stage as Sobble evolves into its final form. It has been speculated that the theme of the Galar region starters could be entertainment, with Scorbunny representing sports, Grookey representing music, and Sobble representing the theater and performing arts. And if this was in fact the case, then that would mean that 2 out of the 3 starters at the very least would have this theme represented on their face. It's kind of unclear whether or not the pattern on Grookey's face has anything to do with its potential music inspiration, but as I have been saying throughout the video, it is at the very least something interesting that is worth taking note of and writing down, because it could very well end up being more significant once we end up getting more information on the games. And there we have it, everybody. Those were 10 things that you probably haven't noticed about Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now, like I said, these weren't the most mind-boggling things ever, but I personally thought they were pretty interesting, and I haven't seen anyone talk about them, so I figured they were worth mentioning just for the simple fact that they might end up being a little more important than they appear now further down the road. If you guys enjoyed the video though, be sure to give it a like and let me know down in the comments below what you think of these things and if you think they have any significance, and if there is something else about the game or the trailer that you have noticed that no one else has been talking about. If you are new to the channel as well, be sure to subscribe for more new Pokemon content every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and if you'd like to support the channel further, consider following me on Spotify and giving some of my Pokemon remixes a listen there, because that directly supports the channel and it goes a long way to allow me to continue bringing videos to you guys like this every week. With all that being said though, I will be back on Thursday for another video, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you can be notified as soon as it goes live. And with all that being said, I hope you know I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.